Ever feel like you're doing this teaching thing alone? You don't have to be. Shared teaching is all about sharing the workload through the power of collaboration and teamwork. Together, we'll walk through all the difficult parts of teaching and learn how to streamline our processes, fine-tune our time management, and develop a more manageable workload. If that sounds like a dream come true to you, then welcome to the Shared Teaching Podcast. Let's share in the teaching to make those dreams a reality. Now here's today's Shared Teaching. Hello and welcome back to the Shared Teaching Podcast. I'm your host, Susan, and you are listening to another episode in the writing process series. So this is episode 160, where we're talking all about the revising step. So hang in there with me and let's get to it. So revising is a crucial part of the writing process. So our previous two episodes were planning out the writing and then actually doing the writing. So now after that, we look at revising. So revising can be very challenging for our young writers because most students believe when they're done, they're just done and they move on. They don't want to revisit writing. They don't want to fix anything. They just want to be done with it, right? And so it really is up to us to teach them to understand that good writing requires refining our ideas and improving upon our work. So let's go ahead and talk about why this even matters. So when we revise, we're allowing our students to reflect on their writing and make changes to improve clarity, structure, and creativity. It also teaches important skills such as recognizing areas that need improvement, rearranging their ideas for a better flow, adding details to make the story more engaging for the reader, and removing unnecessary information, right? Kind of like those math problems where there's just extra information in the word problem that has nothing to do with the word problem, right? We want our writing to be like that, streamlined, no extra information that just makes our readers go, what? That makes no sense. So when students learn to revise, they're going to develop a growth mindset and they're going to see writing as a process that a process that involves improvement rather than perfection. So some of the ways we're going to teach these revising skills to our students are we're going to provide positive feedback. So a little praise goes a long way. Our students are just beginning to learn how to write. If you think about it, if you are a first or second grade teacher, they've really only been writing officially in school for a year or two, right? So it's really important to offer that encouragement. We're going to find parts of their writing or their storytelling to praise during the revising step. We really want them to feel empowered and excited to write. Holding writing conferences or having a daily share time during your writing block can really help build that confidence in our writers. So we want to focus on just one aspect of revision when we're first teaching the revision process, rather than go through all the steps all at once, because then we're really going to have our students be overwhelmed. So one way I teach this is I use a checklist. Now, I am a big fan of using checklists with my students. You're going to reflect on what and how many steps you want your students to take during the revision process. So my second graders, I've always had them do 4 major areas that I want them to think about when they're reviewing their work for possible revision. These 4 areas are adding more details, removing unnecessary words, changing words to sound better, and moving words around. So very similar to the ARMS acronym, but I don't like teaching my students the acronyms. I like to teach them how to use the checklist. So it's a very systematic process every time they go to look at their writing during the revision step. And we don't do this for all of our writing. And I think I talked about that before on the podcast. We only publish a couple of pieces within a unit, and a unit might last maybe 4 to 6 weeks long. So they are only publishing a very small amount of pieces. So we're not revising all the time. Although it is a really good skill to have, we're just not doing it officially, I should say, except when we're publishing. Okay, so when we're thinking about adding more details or changing words, students really struggle with that difference, and some adults do too, between revising and editing. And we just tend to kind of lump them both together, and then our students really never know the difference because they just do it both at the same time, which is okay, but I like to keep them very separate. One day for revision, next day for revising, or if we're doing it in the same day, then guess what? We switch pens. I always like to use a blue pen for revision and a red pen for editing. Now, all your students are going to automatically try to fix mistakes when like spelling or punctuation, when they're told it's time to revise. And it's just a very common thing for them to do. But it doesn't make sense to them. Why are we working to have a better sounding story before any of these mistakes are fixed? So you're really going to have to kind of teach that to them, because there's always that itch that they want to fix the mistakes before they try the revision part. So a big part of teaching revising is to add details or change part of the writing to make it sound better. I'm stumbling all over my words today. And a way we can do this is we're going to ask our students questions, such as, if it's a fiction story, can you describe this character more, right? What were they wearing? What were they thinking? What were they doing? What led them to want to do this thing? Or what happens next in the story? Or how can we make this part more exciting? What kind of sounds would we be hearing? Or what would we be feeling, right? So really kind of bringing out the senses and kind of prompting questions to make more details is really going to help. And we really want to focus on adding and changing to shift their mindset from fixing mistakes to making their story better. And that's going to help them understand that difference between revising and editing. Editing is fixing the mistakes. Revising is making their story better, sounding better, being more entertaining for the audience, right? We're kind of viewing it in that way. Okay. Next up, we want to make sure we are modeling the revising process. One of the best ways to teach writing is to make sure we are modeling what we want to see our students do. So this is the I do portion of your writing lesson. You are demonstrating for your students by sharing your own writing or even a class story and showing how you identify what areas you need for improvement or to make changes. And this is really done as a think aloud. So you're thinking aloud as you're reading a piece of writing. I always like to have something that's pre-written. And this might be something that I wrote in front of the class like a couple days before, and now it's my publishing piece. So I'm going to go through, let me look at my revision checklist and let's talk about why I think I might add a different word here or change a word over here. And we're just going through those steps of that checklist and thinking aloud our process, because we really want to almost like cut open our head and let them see inside like what we're really thinking, right? Because that is super valuable for our students. We really need them to understand that revising is just a normal and valuable part of writing. All good writers are always thinking about their stories. I don't really like that phrase, or there's a better word that will describe this. Or, I didn't really talk about this other character very much, or maybe I need to add some more thoughts or speech in this part of my story. And I don't want them just to say like, ooh, it was good, or hi, right? I want them to have a little bit more to say. So just showing them how you can talk aloud and really kind of go through that process is going to really help your students understand what should be happening in their own minds when they're going through their writing. The other great thing we can do for our students is to pair students up for peer feedback. This can be such a powerful revising tool. If we pair our students to read each other's work and offer suggestions, we want to make sure we're giving them some kind of guidance, some kind of questions to ask, some things to stay away from, right? We don't want them telling each other that their writing is horrible or it's just not good at all or that they hated it. We really want to kind of model again and be just super explicit when we're working with a partner. These are the types of things that we can say. These are the types of things we can't say. It might take several lessons of just how to be a good peer partner in order for you to feel comfortable releasing them into this role of peer feedback. But once you do, it can be amazing. Students love working together with the writing partners and reading each other's stories, and there's just something really magical about that. So again, you're going to encourage your students to use positive language and ask things like, what did you like about my writing? Or what part did you find confusing? And this is really going to help students also see their own writing from a reader's perspective, because their peer is the reader, right? And if the reader doesn't understand, then there's a disconnect with their audience there. Okay, last but not least, we want to make sure we're building revising confidence with our students, and it's going to take time, practice, and lots of repetition. So if it flops the first time, maybe even the second time you're doing it, it's okay. Just take a step back and approach it just in mini steps. You're not going to be able to do the whole checklist in one day. Maybe you just do one part of it, and you might have to have several mini lessons. This is what adding details looks like. So one day you're going to have a little mini lesson about adding details that answer like the questions about who is in the story. Next, you want to do like what are they thinking? What's happening? What's going on? So you really want to just kind of mini step them through it and just be very explicit and model. By giving these clear instructions and kid-friendly checklists, your students can and will be successful at revising their writing. If you want to learn a little bit more about editing and revising, you can listen to the podcast episode 45, Editing and Revising Teaching Methods. And last but not least, if you haven't picked up the free guide for planning out your writing units, you want to make sure you go ahead and get that. All it takes is an email sign up, and it'll be right to your email inbox as soon as you fill out the form. So all that information is in the show notes, and I will see you next time for an all-new episode. Bye for now. If you've loved this show, then join me in sharing the teaching,
hitting that subscribe button,
and leaving us a review on
iTunes,
so we can be found by more teachers like you who are ready to start sharing the workload. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Find new episodes each week on sharedteaching.com. Thanks for listening to the Shared Teaching Podcast.